to this Partner Showcase. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm from VMware. I'm Director of Product Marketing for our cloud providers. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Dave Wilderman from Connectria. So Dave, welcome. Do you want to start by just giving us an introduction to yourself, and then we'll dive into what Connectria is all about?
Sure, Guy. Dave Wilderman, Vice President of Solutions Architecture with Connectria. Connectria is a managed services provider with a extensive focus on the power systems, things like AIX and IBM I, as well as VMware for our customers that provide the x86 resources. In addition to that, we also have cloud practice with both AWS and Azure, and we can provide managed services on all of those platforms.
And in particular focus as well is also VMware Cloud and AWS for you guys, right?
Correct. VMware Cloud on AWS has become a very big part of our going forward strategy in terms of moving customers to the cloud and getting their power systems plus x86 resources aligned in a cloud environment.
Yeah, so let's just talk about the power systems piece, because that's really interesting, and you're the first cloud provider I've had on that's actually talked about this. And obviously, there's a lot of organizations out there still heavily relying on like mainframe solutions to keep their businesses running. And power systems, a flavor of mainframe is they're providing a lot of transactional management, a huge amount of IOPS compute that you don't necessarily get in cloud environments. So you guys actually take on and help customers migrate from their on-premise solutions to power systems managed and hosted by you, right?
Correct. So what we can do is we can go ahead and provide those power systems resources, as many cores as they need for either IBM I or AIX. And we can go ahead and mate those up to either VMC on AWS or onto AWS itself or any combination thereof.
So tell me how that works then, because often when we're talking about a modern portfolio, a modern estate of applications, we're talking about applications that actually integrate with these solutions, draw data from them, push data to them, that whole kind of input output. How does that work then with a customer who's got power systems and wants to move to cloud? How would you Connectria provide MSP services for them?
Sure. So we typically start off, in a lot of cases, we start off doing some remote managed services for our customer. And that might be both the power systems and the x86 resources on site. But then once they've kind of gotten used to our services in many cases, then they may want to go ahead and extend their capabilities and have disaster recovery. We're there to go ahead and provide them the capability to utilize cloud resources as a disaster recovery point for those x86 and power systems resources with our data centers that we have aligned in both the East Coast and the West Coast today.
Right. Okay. So in other words, then they can start replicating to your data centers where you're running systems, obviously the same kind of install basis they have on site, and at some point they could potentially cut over those systems into your data centers?
Correct. Typically, we're going to be using logical replication tools to go ahead and migrate those workloads from where they're at today into our data center. Those can be used for both a disaster recovery as like I was mentioning it, for a migration to our data centers for more permanency in terms of their production. And then we can also go ahead and provide them disaster recovery because we have a couple of data centers that are both cloud aligned, both from a VMC on AWS as well as AWS itself between those two data center facilities.
So that's a really interesting offering. So as a customer, where if I've got power systems and or any VMware estates as well, I could look to you guys for if I want to get rid of those power systems, for example, and shut down my data centers, I could actually migrate all of my stuff into your VMware cloud in your data centers, your power system cloud in your data centers, and also look at that kind of next phase of my evolution, which may be moving some workloads into VMware Cloud and AWS for adjacency to AWS and app monetization.
Correct. You could start off into our data centers. I mean, we have two more traditional data centers, but then like I was mentioning before, we also have two more public cloud aligned data centers, which are nearby the VMC on AWS data centers in both Ashburn and San Jose, California. So we have the capability of providing those same power system resources that we have in our traditional data centers. We can go ahead and do those in those more public cloud aligned data centers and provide that capability of having, the public cloud plus the power systems side by side.
So you guys are actually selected by VMware to do just that, right? You are
Correct.
delivering that as a service with layer 2 connectivity, so it's seamless between VMware Cloud on AWS and your sites.
Absolutely, absolutely. Today we have a customer that we're working with today who is utilizing VCDR.
Yep,
DR.
that's right.
For doing replication of their x86 resources into our data center. And then they also have a pilot light VMC installation that then allows us to go ahead and utilize NSX to go ahead and create a layer 2 bridge between our data center with the power systems and the VMC data center, which then allows customers, if they had, say, for instance, a more heterogeneous environment where there wasn't any planning in terms of keeping the power systems on different subnets or having them in different groupings of IP addresses, it allows them to go ahead and build those systems out into our data center and not have to worry about having to re-IP or change everything up. It literally is a lift and shift of the environment versus more of a traditional build it and try to then migrate all the data over.
Yeah, got it. That's a high value proposition. And when we say MSP, we're talking about managed services, right? So this is where Connectria are bringing resources and skills to manage that very kind of diverse environment.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're able to provide that full breadth of management from the VCDR to the VMC to our power systems resources, and we provide full management of all of those components to include, backups, regular maintenance, patching, etc.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a big breadth of kind of knowledge and experience, and you're bringing to your customers to be able to do that. And tell me, how has you mentioned some customers that you're working with at the moment, and customers that are using power systems and VMware Cloud and AWS. How have you seen kind of your relationship with VMware support you for these new customer types that you're coming into VMware Cloud and AWS with?
So absolutely, they VMware has brought us into some of these environments and some of the negotiations with these customers to help them out with these particular problems, because obviously AWS doesn't provide power systems, VMware doesn't provide power systems, but Connectria can. We can bring that to the table and provide that capability, which is lacking for a lot of folks. But then to layer in on top of that, all of those managed services capabilities, it really helps out a lot of our customers and makes them, feel like they're taken care of and they're able to go ahead and move forward with whatever the project is.
And how far up the stack does your managed services go, Dave? Do you just like manage the infrastructure, the backups, the DR, or do you go beyond that into app modernization, for example?
So typically we're going to go ahead and we're going to operate up into the operating system stack, and we also do database as a service. In the x86 world, we do a little bit more in terms of some Citrix and some capabilities around that. But beyond that, typically that we're not going to get much higher than into the operating system. And customers typically, they're going to go ahead and run their own applications. Given that there's tens and tens of thousands of applications within our data centers today, there's just not enough time in the day to go ahead and manage all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So these customers with pretty diverse environments, like looking after power systems and looking after the x86 workloads and the VMware workloads. Let's talk a little bit about your VMware footprint inside your data centers today.
Sure.
What does that look like? What type of capabilities do you have there?
So today we have 3 traditional data centers, not public cloud aligned. One of them is in St. Louis. Another one is in Dallas, and then we have a third leg in Amsterdam, Netherlands. So we
Okay.
have the capability of providing VMware resources out of any of those data centers today. And today we have tens of thousands of VMs within those data centers today, all on VMware. That's our de facto standard for all of our hypervisors going forward, and has been our standard that we use for all of our virtualization platform.
Okay, and of course, in places like Amsterdam, I'm not sure about the other ones, St. Louis and others, but there are VMware Cloud and AWS points of presence as well.
Yeah. The two VMware Cloud points of presence are facilities in Ashburn, Virginia, and San Jose, California. So we have a total of 5 data centers today, and those are where those data centers are located at.
Right, so you're covering really customers not only based in the US, but also customers based in Northern Europe as well, who
Correct.
And I guess with VMware Cloud and AWS, actually it's pretty much wherever there's a VMware Cloud point of presence, you can provide services into that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, today Connectria operates in 30 different countries today. So
Well,
we have a global presence, and we're working with folks, in Australia, India, the Middle East, and Europe. So we're very, very versed in going ahead and working with folks outside of the United States. But all of our staff is based in the United States, so all of the regulatory concerns that a lot of U.S. facilities have, we can abide by those as well.
yeah, cool. Okay, and that's just so the focus of today was VMware Cloud and AWS really, and focus on obviously your strengths as a managed service provider. What are some of the use cases that you're seeing customers come to you guys with for VMware Cloud on AWS that warrants them investing in a VMware Cloud and AWS footprint with you?
So like we were mentioning before, one of the easy ones, and it's probably the easy button for most customers out there, is disaster recovery as a service.
Right.
If it's already an existing environment, they need to go ahead and just bring that environment over and have a disaster recovery. VCDR provides a very easy stepping stone to bring their environment over. Pair that with VMC, and then if there's any kind of power systems component that is required there, then we provide all of that all wrapped up in one. That's a really easy progression for most folks. Then once they've gone ahead and moved into disaster recovery, a lot of times folks will go ahead and initiate disaster recovery tests, validate if that all the systems are functioning as they expect. Then at that point in time, they may decide to just go ahead and leave it there. At that, once they've gone ahead and left it there, then it may make sense to go ahead and just continue to operate out of VMC, and then perhaps create another disaster recovery to a different location versus going ahead and continuing to, try to do disaster recovery in the same location. So that's an easy way for a lot of folks to go ahead and push their environments up to the cloud, and then be able to leverage those AWS resources that are out there.
Yeah, the adjacency with AWS is a key kind of decision criteria for a lot of people when they're looking at where they want to be. Having that adjacency is really good.
Sure.
So if I was a customer, then I had power system state, and I have a VMware footprint today. I'm looking to go to VMware Cloud and AWS, and possibly your data center for your VMware Cloud, but definitely your power system. What would be the kind of stages that you guys would work with the customer to help them through that migration?
Sure. So we'd probably start off with doing more or less a discovery phase where we try to figure out and understand all of their business requirements as well as their technical requirements. That's kind of key to going ahead and going through the whole process, is understanding what those things are. Once we have that, then obviously we go through the quoting phase and get statements of work generated for the entire environment. And then after that, then we would be looking to go ahead and implement those designs that we had built out in that initial phase. And then once we got the build out completed, we'd move into a hypercare phase where we're kind of managing and monitoring very, very closely the customer's environment as they're, getting onboarded and running in the environment. And then finally, they'd move into more of a less steady state after that. But that's kind of the progression of a customer from birth to running in a regular operation within our data center facilities or the VMC cloud or anywhere, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and whilst there's a lot of technology available to you guys to help with the VMware migration, what about the power system migration? Because that's going to be top of mind as well.
Sure. So we use a number of different software-based tools to do logical replication. One of our primary tools that we utilize is a tool from Precisely called Mimics. It allows us to go ahead and do logical replication from that either AIX or IBM I, AS400, as some people remember it. That platform then allows it to go ahead and take any kind of journal transactions, replicate those into our data center facility, and keep those two systems in sync. And then once everybody is satisfied that the data is in sync, then we can go ahead and do a system cutover and schedule a cutover with the customer to move that workload over to our data center facility, or just keep it in sync if it's just more or less a disaster recovery as a service type engagement.
Right. So it's much the same principle then with the x86 workloads and VMware stack, is that kind of replication and then eventually some sort of cutover and then steady running state.
Correct.
Okay. And in regards to your portfolio, so you're doing quite a bit today. I mean, you obviously got your VMware Cloud on-prem, you got offerings in VMware Cloud and AWS, you got disaster recovery with VMware. Is there any kind of upcoming offerings that you would want to talk about that customers should know about that maybe be coming down the pipe in the future?
So obviously we're building out the VCDR extensively now. That's probably one of the big ones that we're looking to leverage more and more as we go forward, because we feel that that's really going to be an area of growth for us, especially for a lot of customers who are looking at ways to go ahead and enable their organization to achieve disaster recovery as a service within their environments. A lot of folks out there, they have either had disaster recovery kind of, or maybe it kind of worked, or they've tried, but they've kind of, in many cases, you'll find a lot of them that have failed in that, and they have a lot of challenges around that. Because of all of our experience and our knowledge and all of the work that we've had to do in order to migrate workloads over the years, we've gotten very, very, very good at helping folks build out that disaster recovery plan. Because to be quite honest, a migration and a disaster recovery failover, they look really close. Yeah. So it's really easy for us to make that same association with, moving workloads over via disaster recovery, or for a migration for more permanency within VMware Cloud on AWS, or to one of our more traditional data centers running VMware.
Yeah, I mean, I think the VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery Solution, VCDR, is a really interesting solution, and you're absolutely right. There's more to DR than just DR as a service, which is kind of point and click replicate. It's all about continuity planning, and that involves a whole lot more than just bringing up some VMs and hey, you're all good. No, you got a lot more testing, especially if you got things like power systems involved, and having that continuity of the feeds in and out of those systems, which are pretty intensive most of the time. So to keep your business critical applications going as you do that DR is a really tough thing to do. So you bring plenty of experience to that table, which is good to know. You're probably one of the first MSPs we have who have really trained all their staff in VCDR, and obviously you support VMC already. Tell me, what are some of the in your mind, what are some of the unique value propositions that solution brings with VMware Cloud and AWS?
So probably the biggest one that I could think of is, it gives folks a way to move workloads up to the cloud without having an exorbitant amount of expense. I mean, if you're utilizing the scale out file system and it's based upon the individual VMs, it's typically going to be a much lower cost of entry to implement that kind of a solution rather than going ahead and oftentimes purchasing third-party tools and then dealing with all of the storage and some of the other challenges. So that's one of the reasons why we feel that it's an area of growth for us, is we can see the value in leveraging VCDR going forward in order to really provide customers a capability that they don't have today.
Yeah, and you mentioned a pilot-like configuration earlier on. Do you want to just expand on what that actually means?
Sure. So oftentimes, for instance, when we're pairing power systems up with the VMC, what you'll have to do is you'll have to go ahead and set up some of the networking in to start off with. So you'll have some NSX edge devices that are going to need to be deployed between the environments, and there's going to be some configuration that's going to need to happen. Well, in order to go ahead and get that VMC environment built out, you're going to have to go ahead and instantiate minimally a couple of hosts within that VMC environment in order to go ahead and start setting up all of those components. Maybe you also need to go ahead and set up a disaster recovery Active Directory domain controller. There might be a number of things that would necessarily be built out in that VMC environment to start off with. And those things would be what I would consider to be those pilot-like components.
Right. So yeah, you start with a minimal footprint with VMware Cloud and AWS for disaster recovery. In this case, you start replicating from your on-prem to that pilot-like configuration. And as you say, if you're using the S3 object storage, then you're obviously got lowest storage costs, and there's no egress charges with that, which is also a benefit. And then and like you say, so the important point is that you're able to, as a service, configure all the networking communication. So when a customer does want to start failing over or does want to do a DR test, they've got that network stood up and running for them.
Absolutely. And there may be also some other components within the networking stack that may come into play. So things like load balancing and firewalling and containing, particular VMs that, say, for instance, there you have a DMZ or you have other components. Those things may need to be built out in advance before you start layering in the actual VMs that are going to be running behind that. So having all of that network configuration done beforehand is critical for a lot of folks in terms of being able to utilize that environment moving forward.
And when a customer is looking at this, it's so VMware Cloud on AWS is based on our software-defined data center, which is vSphere, NSX, vSAN as a minimal kind of footprint, and that's all self-contained. That's basically, you've got all of the components to create that full software-defined data center, which you're talking about now, right? The networking, the security, the firewalls, the edge devices, all inherent in that VMware Cloud footprint.
Correct. Those things are all there right from the very get-go, which makes it very easy for us to go ahead and deploy customers into those environments.
Excellent. Okay. Well, David, this is just a kind of final thought then. You've obviously got your company, Connectria, has got a unique value proposition. If you were going to sum that up for customers that are listening now, how would you do it?
So Connectria is your MSP to provide you capabilities within VMware, power systems, and cloud, and we can go ahead and provide that 24/7, 365, and anything that you would need, we can bring it to bear.
And in 36 countries. I think you said 36.
True.
All right, brilliant. And David, how can customers get in touch and find out more about Connectria?
So they can go ahead and go to our website, www.connectria.com, or if they wanted to go ahead and email sales@connectria.com, they could certainly go ahead and email our information or sales email addresses, which is info.connectria.com, and we'd be happy to go ahead and reach back out to them and work with them.
Fantastic. Dave, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and find out more about Connectria.
Very good. Thank you.